So today's topic of discussion is classicism versus romanticism. So in order to know the difference between classicism and romanticism, we have to know what is classicism, what is neoclassicism and what is romanticism. Okay. And in this video I'm also going to discuss in which period of English literature you will find the spheres of classicism, romanticism and neoclassicism. So this video is going to be quite important for you all. So let's start. So friends, basically classical, romantic, they are the kinds of art. So here art means everything like literary piece, music, architecture. You can define everything as art, okay? So Walter Peter and other many critics believe that there are mainly two kinds of art, classical and romantic. Some period of English literature followed the tendency of classical art. Then in some period they are seen the predominance of the tendency of romantic art. So in this manner, classical and romantic art, or we can say classicism and romanticism, in the periods of English literature appear alternately one after another or one following the another. So it means that in one period of English literature you will find the dominance of classical art, and then in the other period you will find the tendency of romantic art, then again in another period you will find classical art, and again in another period you will find romantic art. So now let's check out that what is classicism. So classicism is an aesthetic attitude dependent on the principles which is based on the cultures of art and literature of the ancient Greece and Rome especially, okay. So classicism is seen in literature, art, philosophy, architecture as well as music. Classical art marked by clearness, sense of proportion, restraint, objectivity, calmness, belief in reason, realism, a combination of passion and thought, and orderliness. In so many periods of English literature, you will find the tendency of classical art. So now let's check out what is Neoclassicism. So friends, actually in Neoclassicism, Neo means new and classic means the styles and works of classical Roman as well as Greek authors. Okay, so Neoclassicism means rebirth of classicism. Actually, in the Restoration Age, in the Augustan Age, the age of Johnson, in these ages, we have seen the classical influence so much, okay? So, after the Restoration of 1660, so after the restoration of King Charles II in 1660, and the early decades of the 18th century, there begins Neoclassicism in English literature. So, Neoclassicism implies actually a return to the classical spirit of Greece and Rome. After the spontaneous growth of romantic literature under the impact of Renaissance, and in Elizabethan age also there will find the rise of romanticism or romantic literature, okay. So that's why there also begins neoclassicism. It means the reawakening of classicism, we can say, which was a reaction against the excesses of romanticism. So this new spirit of classicism is seen in the literature of France, Spain and Germany. So now we have to know that what is romanticism, okay. So romanticism implies an extraordinary expansion of mind and imagination in a literary or artistic expression. So basically in the later part of the 18th century, romanticism begins as a reaction against the neoclassicism, and neoclassicism emphasis on reason, rationality and order. In 1798, with the publication of lyrical ballads by both Wordsworth and Coleridge, and this publication of these lyrical ballads marked the beginning of the movement which is called Romanticism. Okay, but friends, actually from the Elizabethan age, the romantic tendency in art or in literary piece began to start. Okay, and by romantic period we know from 1798 to 1830 or 1838. It means the mid of 19th century. So in the age of prose and reason, actually in the 18th century, that is also called Dryden's age, in the works of Dryden Pope, you will find the classical features. That's why romanticism appeared, and it stands against sharp contrast to the age of reason and to the age of prose, okay. So in the English literature, before William Wordsworth, before Coleridge, in the works of the precursors of romanticism like William Blake, Lord Byron, Thomas Gray, William Collins, Cowper, Burns, Oliver Goldsmith, Thomson, Young, you'll find the romantic notes. So now let's check out the characteristics of romanticism. They are love of nature, mysticism, subjectivity, imagination, a revival of past, escapism. These are the things, okay? These are the main things. So now let's trace the different periods of classicism and romanticism in English literature. So actually, we all know that classicism has its root with the ancient Greece, ancient Rome. So from the 5th and 4th centuries BC, with writers like Aristotle and Sophocles, and in the 1st century BC in Greece, as well as in the 1st century AD in Rome with the writers like Cicero and Virgil, the art forms which are called classical began to rise. In the mid-medieval period, classicism began to develop in English literature. Actually, Renaissance, which started in Italy, and then after France, Spain, Germany, it reached to England. Okay, so classicism was first seen after the fall of Byzantium during the Italian Renaissance. So Renaissance classicism actually sought to mimic the literature, art, philosophy of the ancient Greek and Rome. So now, as I said about Renaissance classicism, actually in the European Renaissance, there were two factors, okay? Firstly, as I said that the classical spirit, classical literature began to flourish. And secondly, basically in England, there was seen the immense expansion of human imagination. So from this time, then Elizabethan period, the Romanticism in English literature began to arise, okay? And one more thing is that Thomas More's Utopia actually introduced the romantic imagination and the humanitarian idealism in the Renaissance literature. So then in the Elizabethan period, romantic tendency began to establish, and then in the late 17th century in the French literature, there is found the influence of classical arts. Okay. So thus, classicism started to dominate the English literature during the Restoration Age, then the age of Enlightenment or Neoclassical period, etc. Okay. So in the 18th century, Dryden, Pope, Addison, Dr. Johnson were the major practitioners of classical art. And during the Victorian period, the romantic tendency continued to dominate. And then in the 20th century literature, you will also find the signs of classical tendency in the works of T.S. Eliot and Eugene O'Neill. So these are the periods which bear the tendency of classicism and romanticism. Okay. So now let's check out the difference between romanticism and classicism. So classicism is distinguished by the qualities of clearness, reason, sense of proportion, restraint, calmness, grace of form, objectivity. Okay. And on the other hand, romantic art is distinguished by curiosity, excitement, enthusiasm, imagination, aspiration, freedom, and restlessness. So now just take a screenshot and write it down. So that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching this video.